Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming along to our candidate briefing session today. So before we kick off, I'll get to some housekeeping soon, but before we get into anything, we have Kahu Ropata here, our iwi Partnerships Manager, who will open with a karakia. Thanks, Kahu.
Anō tēnā tātou hui mai nei tēnei ata I raro I te tāu, tēnei tō tātou nei whare kauni here, Sean, ka nō mai koe hei tia mana, tēnā rawa atu koe taio, mātanga reo, I roto I tō kaupapa. Tainu atu kia koutou ngā hāpori, committee hāpori, community boards, tēnā koutou. Huri no tēnā tātou katoa. Councillor Halliday, kei te whiti mai te rā te kite atu I a koe. Tēnā rawa atu koe, o tira tātou. Tēnā whātoro atu, tēnā kau kia rātou tō wāhi ngaru, kia tau mai nei te manaakitanga. Ki runga ki e nei hunga o tira tēnei kaupapa. Tā wharautia tēnei kaupapa I te tāwharau take. O te mana atu o te mana ari ki tūturu kia rongo, whakamaua kia tīna hui e tāi ki mauri ora ki te whare. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora kahu. So just some housekeeping to start off with. So if there is an emergency, please exit by the closest door, via the main door, and the evacuation point is over by the Maple building. There will be council wardens also evacuating, so follow our council staff with hats in the unlikely event that there's an emergency. Bathrooms, for those of you not aware, are just out the door, and there's a sign just out that main door there. So if you need help, Katrina or the customer service desk can direct you to the bathrooms. This session is being recorded and is also on by Zoom. So welcome to our Zoom participants this morning. So that's most of the housekeeping, I think. So I'll just start by introducing our panel here today. Welcome Sean Mallon. So Sean is our Group Manager, Infrastructure Services. So Sean will be here to talk to you all about council and the life of an elected member. We've got Dale Ofsosky here. Dale is our Electoral Officer. And Dale will talk to you all about what it means to stand and to be a candidate and an elected member. We also have Tanika Mason, Senior Advisor, Democracy Services. And I can see in the seats there, we've got a couple of our current elected members, Councillor Halliday and Councillor Lewis on the community board. So welcome this morning. We'll try and keep this session relatively informal. So if you have questions as we go through, there's a microphone there. So feel free to go up to the microphone and let us know if you have a question. There'll also be a question and answer session at the end of our session today. There's quite a bit to get through. It's likely to take us about 90 minutes, but we'll do our best to get you out of here by 11 or just after 11. So I think that's all from me. Oh, yeah, there's a question. There are people online at the moment. Yes.
Kia ora, Lawrence. Those in the room were just wanting to know if you were able to introduce yourself.
Kia ora koutou. My apologies for not being there in the room today. I'm actually on ACC recovering from a surgery. Live here locally in Paraparaumu and am considering standing as a candidate in the Paraparaumu ward. I'm actively involved in our local community through Carpet Impact Trust. So nice to see you all, and sorry I'm not there in the room. Kia ora.
Thank you, Lawrence. And we also have, oh no, that's fine, just Lawrence.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introductions online. So we will now hand over to Sean, who will take us through what we do as council and what it means to be an elected member. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sarah. Morning. Welcome to everyone. The speakers, if you are going to use them, I guess if anyone's on Zoom, they will only be able to hear you if you're using the speaker, so the mic. So it's not just for the people in the room here. If you do have questions, as Sarah's mentioned, Happy to do questions as we go through the slides. And I guess I'm going to talk to you about my perceptions of what it's like to be a councillor. And I'm sure you can get some feedback from the people in the room on what that's actually like. But it's also, I guess, a summary of how council works and how operationally we interact with the councillors. And so today you're in the council chambers. If you haven't been in here before, this is where we have our council meetings. And obviously with COVID and everything else, we do have the Zoom facilities here, and council meetings are live streamed on YouTube, maybe? Zoom?
Yeah, we'll be making a recording available on the website where we have all information about what it means to stand. So that'll go up within the next few days. Okay, so what are we going to cover off today? So life as an elected member, the role of councillor, as I mentioned, the role of councillor versus community board member, and because we have councillors and we also have community board members across the district. And what does the road ahead look like in terms of standing, and then a little bit around the process associated with once the elections have been completed. So obviously we're here today because there's an election on the 8th of October. And every 3 years we have an election and go through this process, I guess, and my role here at council. So I'm the group manager for infrastructure services, been at council for 15, 16 years. So seen a few elections come and go and worked with lots of councillors, I think 3 or 4 mayors in that time, and obviously community boards. So I certainly enjoy the work I do here, and there's lots of things in here about process and stuff like that. But from a collaboration, collegial point of view, as an officer here at council, that interaction between the council and community boards is something that I see anyways, it's very positive, and you know, it's a great opportunity for us together to look to take the district forward and the community with us. So we're going to talk a little bit about insights into life as an elected member or a community board, the difference between councillors and community board members, and that will be that. So we'll hear from me, they'll also hear from Dale, and then we've got a video from Jenny Rowan, who will talk to you probably more from an elected member's perspective. So Jenny's been a mayor here, she's 2 terms as mayor. I think she was on the Paikokariki Community Board for a time as well. So we'll get to that video. I think that's after me. So the role, what is the role of council? So council, this is council and it's as a whole, I guess. So there's I guess there's a legislative definition of what that means, and it's to lead and represent the community, enable democratic local decision making that promotes social, economic, environmental and cultural wellbeing of the district at a very high level. But sitting underneath that, obviously, there is a whole lot of other stuff that goes on. So key to those are, I guess, advocating on behalf of the local community with central government. That's a key part of what we do, and other local government agencies. So Greater Wellington Regional Council, who are responsible for, I guess what you'd say, the environment. Their catchment extends up to Otaki and also over to the Wairapa. So we have a fair bit to do with them, and also with other local councils, obviously within the wider sort of Wellington region. We also manage local infrastructure. That's a key part of my role here at the council, which is all the exciting stuff you see out there: roads, sewers, water mains, stormwater, solid waste. Some other community-based infrastructure, obviously libraries, community centres, parks. And we also, though, have a responsibility from, I guess, from an environmental point of view in managing those activities within the district, like building consents, resource consents for subdivision and developments. We have a role in environmental control in terms of public health, both from a, I guess, a building and operational point of view, but also out there within the district in terms of water quality monitoring, things like that. In coordination, a lot of that work is done with Greater Wellington Regional Council, but we still do have a role in there.
And I guess another key part of that is to plan for the district's future. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing recently, the sort of growth strategy, looking out to the future and making sure basically that the district is able to manage and cope with whatever's coming in terms of growth as best we can, in terms of projecting what that looks like. And then as that growth occurs, I guess on a more day-to-day basis, managing that process through some of the resource consents, building consents area, and again, as I've mentioned, the environment and the sort of build infrastructure which sits in my space. So, I said, if you've got any questions, more than happy to fire them through as we work through this. So that slide's a little bit, I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but sort of talks about how the district is made up. So the population currently stands at about 58,000. I think in the next 30 years, that's looking at growing by another 30,000. So I mentioned the role that we have in growth. So that's a significant focus for the council in terms of managing that. And we're split into 4 key wards. So Otaki, Paraparumu, or Otaki, Waikanai, Paraparumu, and then you've got Raumati and Paikokariki. So you've got 4 wards, but we have also got community boards. I mentioned that briefly before. So previously we've had 4 community boards. This time around we will be having 5. So that's a recent change. So Otaki, Paraparumu, Waikanai have community boards. The new one is the Raumati is going to have a community board this time around, and then you've got Paikokariki. So there's some stats up there in terms of numbers, which I'm not going to read out, but that's, I guess, the constituency, if you like it, in terms of the district. We have, I think it's 10 councillors, 7 sort of ward-based councillors, and then 3 district-wide councillors, and then obviously we have the mayor. And then each of those community boards has 4 members associated with the community board. You might have seen some councils have a Māori ward. Kapiti doesn't currently have one of those. We have 3 iwi partners here that we work with, Ngāti Toa o Rangatira, Te Atiawa ko Whakarongatai, and Hapu or Otaki. And so in consultation with the 3 iwi partners we have here, the decision was made by council to focus on building a stronger relationship with those 3 iwi partners in advance of establishing a Māori ward. So that's the current status. We do, though, we have just recently, I guess, strengthened our governance area in that space, and we'll have iwi membership on several subcommittees of council moving into the new triennium, which is from 8th of October, obviously.
Yeah, just to clarify that point, so that'll be for the remainder of the triennium. The new council that are appointed will need to make that decision again about what mana whenua representation looks like for the new council.
Thanks, Sarah. So our vision, so the council has a vision, a thriving environment, and that I guess forms a key part of our long-term plan and the work that went into establishing that last year, the year before. So thriving environment, vibrant economy, and strong communities are keys to that vision, I guess. The challenges I talked about before and some of the things that you'll be dealing with as a councillor relate to, even though the district, the last couple of years has actually, from an economic development point of view and from a GDP point of view, is doing well. People working from home with COVID and spending more time within the district has sort of helped feed more money into the economy here, and which is a positive thing. And again, but it's managing moving forward in terms of the future as I guess as COVID moves through or moves on. What does that look like in terms of the district, in terms of both GDP and economic well-being is a key thing that you'll be dealing with. So I mentioned growth. So we have a Te Tupu Pai Growing Well strategy that's just been signed off by council, which is trying to make sure that all of those elements I talked about before in terms of environment, community, all of those are considered as we move into, I guess, a more I guess, an increased phase of growth for Kapiti. And part of that process is also going to be working through our long-term plan. So as a councillor, the council has a number of planning documents, but the key ones are our long-term plan, which is basically looks out over 20 years, defines the direction of council, and then sitting within it, it highlights all the areas of focus and expenditure and delivery and performance measures and elements that council build on to move through that period of time. They have a real strong focus in over a 3-year period is where we've got more certainty, I guess, in terms of what's likely to happen, but they do look out 20 years and try and anticipate what that growth might look like, because a lot of the work that we do, certainly from an asset infrastructure perspective, we're managing infrastructure that has 80 to 100 years life. So 20 years is really a small snapshot in terms of the life of those assets, and some of the bigger issues that we deal with, like the environment, like climate change, you need to be looking out a lot further in terms of the future horizon. So that's a key document, and we're into year 2. This is the 2nd year of our long-term plan. So 3rd year is next year, sort of from 1 July 2023. So a key piece of work, we'll be looking at developing that long-term plan as you move forward into 2024. The other key document is our annual plan. So you have so the LTP is the broader, long-term future planning document. The annual plan is really the specifics for the next 12 months. So we have a financial year that runs through from 1 July to 30th of June. And the annual plan really picks up on, because lots of things change. If there are changes from the long-term plan, then they are reaffirmed through that annual plan process. And we've just signed off on an annual plan. Council signed off on that on the 28th of June. And we're now working through delivering that back to the community. So one of the things in terms of, I guess, one of the key things that's sort of changed in the last 3 years, I think 3 to 4 years with council, is a much bigger investment in capital works for the district. So council's built around funding. We have operational expenditure, which is the day-to-day stuff that we deliver that doesn't really add assets to the council's balance sheet. So buildings, roads, pipes, pump stations, things like that. Those are sort of long life assets that we use capital funds to pay for. So that's money that the council borrows. The day-to-day stuff that we do, that's operational expenditure. So, tea and coffee, wages for staff, all of those things that support the council's operations come from an operational expenditure focus. So the capital budget, and you'll hear a lot of reference to that as a councillor, has grown from, on average, we used to spend maybe $20–25 million a year on capital works. So that's, as I mentioned, all sorts of things: pipes, roads, parks, playgrounds, and that money's borrowed, and that affects council's level of debt. We are now, we've moved probably, last 2 years into a much more, I guess, an advanced capital delivery program, where this year we have $84 million is the capital budget for this year. And if you've read anything about what's going on here, I guess in the district, a lot of that is focused on new community assets. So library, for instance, for Waikanai, community centre for Paraparumu. Otaki also has that's not all in this year. Otaki also has a need to look at a library up there and a community centre. We have a new link road proposed. Some of that funding is this year. That will link Ihakura Street basically through the back of this area here, the open space that you see, town centre, through to Kapiti Road at the Arawhata intersection. So there's $27 million there for a new link road. So the council's moved into, in conjunction with what's happening around growth, Transmission Gully opening, spending a lot more in terms of developing the infrastructure for the district. So that's a significant change. We have a dedicated project management office here within council to help deliver that. But that'll be a key key issue for you as a councillor and a community board member, and certainly from a councillor's perspective, monitoring the delivery of that, as well as lots of other things that we monitor and report back to council. So some of the challenges, I'd mentioned COVID a little bit at the start. Obviously, that's had a big impact how we deliver work, as it has for everyone. Climate, environment, the climate change issues that we are faced with. Also, a lot of change in the way that we do our work, which a lot of it's regulated by central government legislation. So if you're aware, there's been quite a bit of change in terms of a national focus on improved fresh water quality. So that's having a big impact on how we deliver our work. As well as that, we've also got a few other things going on that the government are running at the moment, which you may have heard of, the Three Waters Reform Program. That's been ongoing for the last at least 2 years, and is a major change. It's probably the biggest change in local government history, possibly even maybe bigger than amalgamations back in the 80s, where the government are looking to centralise the management of three waters. So water, wastewater and stormwater will be run through a single entity for Kapiti, which will incorporate, I think there's 22 councils, which is basically from Nelson up to Gisborne pretty much. And that'll be a single entity that manages those three water assets, and the community will pay for that work directly to that entity. So it won't be covered through your rates anymore, and it'll be paid through into this new entity. So there's actually submission just gone in this week. There's a paper on the website if you're interested. Council submissions there if you want to have a look. The other two pieces of reform, which again have major implications for council, are the Resource Management Reform, and that the Resource Management Act basically is a guiding document, or an overarching document actually, that sets regulations around what you can do within the environment and controls a whole lot of stuff that we do in that resource consent space and our district plan space as well. So that's a major piece of reform. The other one is the future of local government. So if you think about the three waters makes up probably 20%, I think 25% of our asset base at least. And if council aren't managing that anymore, then that for some councils, not so much for this councils, lots of smaller councils, that will take a huge chunk of their organisation out of the council. So the government are looking at, in a wider context, what does local government look like for the future? And so that work's going on. I'm not sure in terms of timing on reporting back for that. I know the Three Waters Reform, the government are looking at establishing those new entities by 1 July 2024. So the next triennium will be that will be a significant part of what the council will be involved in, and what does this council look like if they are not responsible for managing those assets anymore. So I mentioned the long-term plan. So long-term plan, those assets are worth probably, I think, up to about $400 to $500 million. So if they're not part of council, what does that mean in terms of our balance sheet, levels of debt, all sorts of things like that? So questions? Cool. So just a little bit about the how the council is set up. So we're basically split into a governance arm, which is the councillors or the elected representatives, and our operations, which is the chief executive and the staff that report through to group managers, so through me and then through to the chief executive. So the governance part of the council really sets our policy and strategy, sets a direction around that, and then makes decisions and monitors the delivery, I guess, of the back on those policies and strategies. So if you have a look online, you'll see the council's long-term plan. Within there are a whole lot of measures that we report back to the council on, which try to capture performance of the organisation. And so that is a key element of your role as a councillor, is to basically keep an eye on what's happening in that space, monitor delivery back on those. As I mentioned, the Capital Works program is a major one, but there's also a lot of other stuff we do that's not just CapEx work. There's the environmental, regulatory area, building control, open space, recreation, climate, interaction with lots of different community groups across the district. So those are reported back through to the council. So, and council then also, I guess, have a role in interacting back out into the community based on that information that we provide to them as well. So in operations, as I said, we deliver on the policy and the strategy for council. So life as councillor. So this is, I guess, my view or our view on what that might look like. I'm sure Martin might be able to correct me as I go through this. But I mentioned we have meetings. This is the council chambers, and here, this comfy chair that I'm sitting in is the mayor's chair. And we generally have the tables set up in a sort of circular half circle, and staff who attend will sit around the outside, and you'll have the community also represented here in the chamber. Obviously, that's been a bit not quite like that based on COVID. And so we've had community zooming into meetings. I don't think we've had public participation here in the chamber for a while, but I think that's possibly going to change as things evolve in terms of the response to COVID. So we have meetings on every Thursday. Well, it's not every Thursday. We have a cycle of meetings that are based on a 6-weekly cycle, but we also have a number of committees. So you'll see it's a sort of rolling frequency in terms of meetings. So we may have meetings every week, 2 weeks, but they won't all be council meetings. So there are a number of committees that are structured underneath the council. Some councils have committees that are made up of parts of the council. Other councils have committees, as Kapiti does, which is basically all of council within those committees. So you might have a finance committee. I think audit and risk is probably our only committee that is not all of council, but the approach has been here. I think that all councillors are welcome to attend those meetings. I just don't think they have voting rights on the audit and risk committee. So, but basically what happens with the new council, all of that structure needs to be reaffirmed. And as Sarah's mentioned, the mana whenua representation, all of that will be reconfirmed with the new council. So the new council, the mayor, I think, basically signs off on how he would like governance to look like in terms of committee structures. And I'll talk a little bit about remuneration for councillors. And there's a link there between remuneration and committees, because committees have chairs and deputy chairs, and there's fees associated with those if you're a councillor. So just a little bit around workload. And again, this is from my perspective, or from the organisation's perspective. It's certainly a full-time job, if not more than 40 hours a week. It would certainly, I'd say, chew up a whole lot of time. Lots of stuff outside of hours. I mean, just on the weekend, we had a workshop down at the Paraparaumu Beach, and Martin was there. A number of other councillors were there. So we do have events on the weekends. Community board meetings are in the evenings every Tuesday, and again, that's a 6-weekly cycle. So it is, it's very similar to a full-time job. So 40 hours a week with a lot of commitments. I guess what differs from a job is I expect you'll get people in the community interacting with you outside of what you normally might see as an 8 to 5 sort of role as an employee of someone like the council. And so it does involve a lot of commitment and a lot of work. We have a code of conduct, we have a job description for councillors, and as I mentioned, there's remuneration that comes with that role as well. But it is a key role in helping set the direction for the community here. So I know from feedback I've had from councillors over the years, certainly from mayors, lots of a very rewarding area to work based on what you can help deliver back to the community. And as I mentioned, a lot of the infrastructure stuff is some of that stuff you don't really see, but there's a lot of other stuff out there that does make a big difference to the community and the way of life here on the district, within the district. So I talked a little about monitoring, making decisions, basically guiding the transformation of your community. So the remuneration for councillors and elected members is, as it states up there, those are, I think for the mayor and the deputy mayor, I'm not sure whether they change with committee or chairmanship or anything like that. I think they're.
Yeah, so there is, with the current structure, so the remuneration is set by the Remuneration Authority, so that is outside of our control, and these are the current rates for the new financial year. The way that our current council and the Remuneration Authority have organised it is that there are different levels. So there's Portfolio A and Portfolio B remuneration to reflect councillors who hold additional portfolios or are for example, the chair of strategy and operations, there's an additional remuneration associated with that. So there are some different levels to reflect responsibility and time commitment.
Yeah, and I should mention Martin, councillor.
I just wanted to add to that there's actually no current councillors under $45,000. They're either the portfolio structure A and B, or deputy chair's role. It's usually spread out in such a way. So the minimum really is around 45 at the moment. And then there's some chair positions which allow for a bit more remuneration on top of that.
Yeah, so you have a base salary, then you have additions that go towards that, over and above that, depending on what your workload looks like and what you're involved in from a committee structured point of view. I mentioned at the moment so Sarah mentioned portfolios. We this last triennium. So again, in terms of that governance structure and what that looks like with each triennium, there's been a slight change, I'd say, in the time that I've been here, from number of committees changes. But one change that was made last time was the number of committees was reduced, and we went to a combination of portfolios. It was basically a councillor was nominated as the main portfolio holder. So transport's one that sits within my area. So you have a councillor that is nominated as the portfolio owner for transport, and then that councillor then meets regularly with the relevant either GM or activity manager within the council, and becomes a bit of a spokesperson for that particular role, and also then has a role, I guess, within the community in terms of interacting with whatever that community element might look like. The transport, there's interactions there with the Regional Transport Committee. Again, I mentioned Regional Council and the rest of the district. So there's other work that comes with that might sit outside of council, but that's the current structure. Now, again, that may change with obviously a new mayor, new councillors, and that will all be part of, I guess, that first sort of 2 to 3 months of induction after the 8th of October. Or it may stay the same, but it'll be a decision of the new mayor. So those are remuneration. Community boards. I think you can read that. So community boards are really, I guess, the on-the-ground contact with the community at a grassroots level, I guess. So they represent and act and advocate for their relevant communities, and they also would consider and report on issues that council put back to them, I guess, as a community board. They also, I guess, at an officers level, we also report back to those community boards on issues within their particular ward, and they have some delegation certainly around community grants. There's a sum of money that each of the community boards have for the year, and then there's a process whereby a community can apply for funding for various things, and that is then approved by the community boards. And again, they will have roles within, depending on what's happening within the relevant community, within some of the development or maybe some of the community-based work that's happening in that space. So again, from a workload point of view, I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of the council workload, certainly community boards do a lot of work in that space, and it may be up to, I'm not sure in terms of 40 hours a week, but I do know that it can be extremely busy, again, because they meet in the evenings is another issue, and so a lot of those people work as well as then having to provide for the community board, whereas council as well have people that work as well and have and manage both of those. Right, I think that's That's it for me. Any questions? Online, any? He has or he hasn't? Okay.
Doesn't sound like there's any questions. So we've now got a video from former Mayor and Community Board member Jenny Rowan.
Yes, kia ora. My name is Jenny Rowan, and I've had the privilege of the last 40 years of playing many roles in local government, starting as a county councillor in Inglewood in the 1980s, ending up as the mayor of the Inglewood District Council. Then I was the deputy chair of the Taranaki Regional Council. 16 years in the Environment Court as a commissioner, which kept me in touch with local body issues and processes, and then coming up to live in Kapiti, where I was on the Paikakariki Community Board, and then became the mayor of the Kapiti District Council for 6 years, about 12 years ago. I think considering being a councillor and playing a role on behalf of your community is a real privilege in our democracy. And if you are seriously considering that, then some of the skills you need, because you don't actually need any qualifications, but you do need to bring to the job a sense of service, a sense of wanting to be quite intimately involved with your local community, and if you're running for district-wide, then understanding the issues of the whole district. You need to be personable, you need to be willing to engage with all sorts of people on all sorts of issues, and have a very good listening ear, and of course these days a reasonable grasp of the technologies that are available to you to help you with your communications. But a willingness to serve is actually the most critical thing. This is not about you advancing your own career or personal gain. This is about you wanting to serve your community and make decisions on behalf of your community that leaves them in a better place than you found them. It's very challenging being an elected member. I think the first 3 years can be a real coming into this environment. You are in the fastest growing district in the Wellington region. There are many major issues facing the district at a domestic level, and of course you've got two very big conversations going on nationally. One is the review of local government and its role, and the other one is the matter of the three waters. So what's it like? It will be full on for you. You will need to hit the decks running at one level. You will need to have briefed yourself on some of the matters, had a look at the annual plan, at the long-term plan, be familiar with and have had a look at the Local Government Act, the Resource Management Acts, possibly the Emergency Civil Defence Act, just to have a feel for what you are stepping into. But that's the challenge, and quite frankly, that's why it's such a rubber hits the road environment, and I really used to love that. It's critical now that anybody running as a councillor or interested in local body decision making understands the treaty principles, the co-governance principles, why they need to happen, because they are going to happen, and you need to be able to come in and work in that environment. So understanding basic te reo, understanding who the three entities are in this district and what they mean and their history, I think now is critical as we move forward. To the skills and abilities, one of the most important aspects is the ability to think in a bigger picture, to have that appreciating you're coming into a governance role. You are making policy in a governance manner. You are not management. So that's a very, very important thing to understand. You are not here to tell the staff what to do. You are here to work with the CEO through the mayor to formulate policy that then management go away and enact. This is all done through the long-term plan and annual plan. So one of your major skills is to have that big picture thinking that allows you to look at all aspects of an issue that's before you. I think for a mayoral candidate it's very different because it's actually 24/7 for 3 years. For you as a potential councillor, you still have an opportunity to manage it in a way that the impact can be minimised. Nevertheless, you will have at least 30 hours of your week, 40 hours of your week taken up with this role. You have to have time to read. You should be connecting into your community, into groups, going to meetings, having lots of coffees. And if you can avoid that being around your family time, that's for you to manage, and I would strongly advise that you do, because it can impact in a way that does not necessarily enhance your relationship. Really important that your partner supports you in this decision. I used to love the community contact. There are fabulous people in this community. There are some very difficult people as well, but actually outweighed by the passion and the commitment that many hundreds of people have in the Kapiti district. And you get to know them, and you get to know a lot about them, and work with them, and that by far, and at the end of the day, probably make some decisions that really do make a difference in their lives and in all our lives. That's nothing beats that, in my view.
Any questions? We're about to move into Dale's piece, but are there any questions in the interim? Can I just get you to do it on the mic, just so that those online can hear you? Thank you.
I just wanted to add a couple of things, if that's all right, just from a different from a perspective. As Glenn pointed out, selling the dream, so to speak, by Jenny there. But look, yeah, it's important to get up to speed with things like the long-term plan, annual plan. There's a 4-month window, which I wasn't aware of coming into this, really from October through to about February. And correct me if I'm wrong here. Yes, there are council meetings, and yes, but there's a lot of putting things in place, if you like. That's a really good time to read up on stuff, to get yourself ready for the coming 3 years, if you like. You might not understand it all. That'll come sort of clear but as you go. But things like the annual plan or the long-term plan and that sort of stuff, that's a really good time to read that sort of stuff. Also, yep, I've committed to the role full time, so I'm 40 hours a week. But look, school holidays, there's a break. They don't have meetings, and all meetings tend to tie down on the school holidays. Same with the Christmas period as well. It does wind down. I used to think, it's but it's needed. I was mentally exhausted after the first 2 years come Christmas. So it was good to have that break sort of scenario. And look, our key times at the moment are Thursdays and Tuesdays. With regards to briefings on Tuesdays, council meetings on Thursdays, tend to keep those two free. Council tends to drop most of the stuff within those 2 days, but there's obviously the preparation time as well, and of course getting out to the community as well. Only real question I had was to Dale with regards to boundaries. Do we know, are we getting more delineated boundary lines since they've all been changed with the representational review that we can view as such?
Yes, we got an email from Jacobs, I think it is, that they are due either end of this week or beginning of next week. So as soon as we get them, they'll go online. So that's the more detailed boundaries of the wards and boards and down to roads as well. So yep, it's imminent.
Another question?
Hey, kia ora. It's more of a comment. Just thanks, Sean. That was really clear and easy to understand. Thanks for that. Nice to see Jenny up there. And it's really helpful having Martin go on and on as he does. That's really helpful having Martin tell us, have those ups and downs. So, it's a little bit of insight. So thanks very much. Thanks, Marty.
Wonderful. So I think it's over to you now, Dale. We'll just pull up Dale's slides.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for the welcome. Today I'm just going to be talking more about the nuts and bolts, the practicalities, if you like, for those thinking of standing. And as I go, I'm more than happy to take questions. So just put your hand up or blurt your question out. More than happy. It's more interactive and better from my perspective as well. So by way of some general electoral information, so Kapiti Coast District Council currently has 42,700 electors and a population of about 58,000. Elections are held by postal vote on Saturday, the 8th of October for all councils throughout New Zealand, so it's consistent right across the country. We'll also be holding elections for Greater Wellington Regional Council, as well as the District Council. But just note that there are no DHBs now. They went out of existence at the end of June. So there will be no DHB elections on the voting documents or the voting packs that go out. We'll be using the STV electoral system again. And the order of candidate names on the voting documents will be random. So councils every 3 years have an opportunity to look at the order of candidate names that appear on the voting documents between alphabetical, pseudo-random and random. And council has again resolved to retain random. So just for your information, pseudo-random is once nominations close, all the candidate names go into a hat or something and a JP pulls those out in order. And that's the order that everyone gets on their voting documents. With fully random, the order is different for every person. So the computer generates that order in the printing process. So key election dates, nominations have already opened on the 15th of July and close on Friday, the 12th of August at 12 noon. So there will be delivery of voting packs and voting papers delivered, excuse me, from the 16th of September, and voting will close at 12 noon on Saturday, the 8th of October. We'll have progress results announced later that afternoon, and on Thursday, the 13th of October, we'll have a declaration of results announced. So what elections are required? We have elections for the mayor, of course, elected district-wide. And we have election of 10 councillors from 4 wards, but that electing 7 councillors, and there will be an additional 3 councillors elected district-wide. There'll be 20 community board members elected from 5 community boards, as Sean set up from 4 previously with the addition of the new Raumati Community Board. And we'll have elections for the Greater Wellington Regional Council as well. So on to that issue of maps. That's the best map that we have at the moment. It's not particularly clear, and that's the one that's in the booklet and on the council's website currently. But as I stated, the process of getting more detailed maps, there is a process that comes from Local Government Commission onto LINZ and onto Department of Stats, and that goes through to the provider of those maps through the Local Government Commission, and they'll be available shortly. So electoral roll, there are actually 2 electoral rolls compiled by the council. The first one is the resident electoral roll, and that's every New Zealand citizen or permanent resident aged 18 or over that has enrolled. A person has resided continuously in New Zealand for 1 year or more and resided at an address for 1 month or more. So if someone moves into the district, they actually have to live there for 1 month or more to affect their change. So all this information, the electoral data, is provided by the Electoral Commission. They do a great job. So it's a common enrolment, if you like. When someone turns 18, they enroll with the Electoral Commission for the parliamentary role. And we simply get an extract of that to run our elections for the electoral roll. The second role is the ratepayer electoral roll. And this is really for your non-resident ratepayers. So these might be people that perhaps live in Wellington and have property here, and they can apply to get onto the ratepayer roll here. So where they live, and let's take this example, they live in Wellington, they get all their voting entitlements where they live. So they can vote for the mayor and the ward, and if they've got a community board, and the region in Wellington where they live. And if they're on the electoral roll and ratepayer roll here, then they can get another vote for the mayor here, the ward here, and the community board here, but you can't get it 2 regional council votes. So that's still 1 person, 1 vote. If someone lived in Palmerston North, for example, they would get the full entitlement because it's a completely different region. So the ratepayer role is by application. It's not automatic. We get a lot of flack about that. Why I own property here, why aren't I automatically on the ratepayer role? The law is the law, and it's by application. So I've got some application forms at the back there, or the forms are online if you wanted to apply to get onto that non-resident ratepayer role. So we currently have about 500 on that role. That's a reasonably good number nationwide. You might think, oh, that's quite low. But it's generally your holiday hotspots where this number is a lot higher, your Thames Coromandel or your Taupo or those sorts of things. And you have a lot of batches here, or holiday homes here, and that's really why your number's trending quite high. All good so far? No questions? Good. Candidate eligibility. So candidates must be a New Zealand citizen, aged 18 or over. A candidate must be enrolled on any parliamentary electoral roll in New Zealand. So you don't actually need to be on the parliamentary electoral roll here. You can be on the roll anywhere. You can be enrolled on the roll in Dunedin, for example, and stand here. No issue with that. But you must be nominated by 2 electors from the area that you're standing in. So if you're wanting to stand in say, the Waikanae ward, then you must be nominated by 2 electors from the Waikanae ward. You can actually stand for multiple positions, so there's no limit there. You can stand for the mayor and for the council and for the community board. And if you're elected to all of them, you take the highest. So if you're lucky enough to be elected to them all, you take the highest. So if you stand, say, for a ward and a community board and you get elected to both, then you take the ward position, and the STV calculator does a recalculation and brings the next highest one up to take the community board position. You can actually stand for more than one community board. So a lot of people don't realise that, but you can actually stand for more than one if you wanted to, and you can actually be elected to more than one. There's no restriction there. Again, it's the electors that will determine that, whether they think you can cope or are suitable for more than one elected role. You cannot stand for both the district council and the regional council. So again, you've got to choose. You can't have a foot in both camps. You've got to choose, I'm going to stand for the district council or the regional council. You can only stand for one ward. So you have to choose which ward you want to stand for, or the district-wide one. So you can't choose on those either. So you have to make a choice. And for the regional council, only one constituency. With regard to elected members, so once you get elected, you or your spouse may have contracts with the council over 25,000 in any 1 year. That's fine, you can still be elected, but there's an extra step to take once you're elected if you fall in that category. So it really just involves the Office of the Auditor General, and it's just all around transparency and things like that. It's just be aware that there is that extra step should you be in that position and should you be elected. Council employees are able to stand for office, no issue there as well. However, if a council employee gets elected to council, that person must resign. That's a direct conflict of interest there. But the law's funny, it doesn't apply to community boards. So you can actually be a council employee and an elected member of a community board. And finally, you can't nominate yourself. People say, well, I'm an elected for the area that I'm standing in, I can nominate myself. With one other, the law is quite specific. You cannot do that. You must be nominated by 2 other people that are electors in the area that you're standing in.
Just in relation to the $25,000 contracts, it says that you cannot have contracts, but you just pretty much were saying that you can have contracts, you just need to go through that process of informing, is it the Ombudsman?
That's quite right. So, and it's only elected members, so it doesn't affect if you're standing. Yep. It's only if you become elected and you fall in that position, there is an extra step to take. You're quite right there. There's just an extra step to take.
So if you inform that body that you've got contracts, that's then not an issue.
Well, it comes after. You've got to get elected first.
I appreciate
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a process that council will help you with to go through with the Auditor General.
Yeah.
It's a transparency thing. Yeah.
Oh, look, I appreciate that. It's just, it says cannot have contracts
Yes.
up there, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you can have
You
contracts.
can have contracts.
As long as you are transparent about that and
Correct.
go through the process of registering. them.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you. So nominations, as I said, open on Friday the 15th. Nomination papers are available here. So directly across the hallway is Katrina sitting in there. So she's got the nominations. They're also available at the libraries. You can download it from the council website and you can phone me on an 0800 number and we can get one out to you. But as time gets closer to the close of nominations and with the postal system, it's probably easier just to pick one up locally from the libraries or here, or download it simply. Simply download it is the easiest way to do it.
Can I just add to that, Dale? So that there's a booth that is directly outside the council chambers, and that will be manned by someone throughout the nomination period. Our usual office hours, so 9 to 5. So if you do want to have someone come along and make a nomination, they can come along. And if there isn't someone at the booth, just talk to the customer service staff, and they can get someone to come down and assist.
Thanks, Sarah. So each nomination does require a nomination deposit of $200. Most candidates get that back. Probably about 95% of electors, of candidates actually get that refunded. There's a formula that we work through. If you poll greater than 25% of the final quota as determined in the last iteration under STB, you actually get that back or refunded. If it's below that percentage, then that deposit gets forfeited and goes into the cost of running the election. So that's mandatory. So your nomination paper and your deposit is mandatory. What is optional, and we strongly encourage every candidate to submit this, is your candidate profile statement. So that's your statement that goes out with the voting documents. You can use that to your advantage. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, what you want to see achieved if you get elected. And it's a maximum of 150 words only, all right? But you can have 150 words in English, and you can also have 150 words in Maori, but the Maori must be largely consistent with what the English says. So you can't actually think, oh, I've got 300 words and I can do 300 words of messaging. It's still 150 words in English and 150 words in Maori. You can actually have other languages if you wish, if you think in your community you would like to have some other languages. Some candidates, for example, may have 50 words in English, 50 words in Mandarin, and 50 words in another language if they wish to, but it all must total 150 words in total. What is also optional, but again, we strongly encourage all candidates to provide it, is a photograph of yourself as a candidate. That goes out with the voting documents with your 150-word candidate profile statement. We provide that in colour, but I do stress that it must be a recent photograph, and I say that deliberately because the law says within the last 12 months. Prior to that legal change, we used to have candidates submitting 10-year-old photographs and things like that, and we just sort of think, you know, is this the same person? So it has to be recent for this purpose.
Can that be supplied in a digital format as such, or does it have to be a physical photo as such?
Until we can have our electronics, our nominations issued and received electronically, which we cannot do currently, we prefer that to be in hard copy, just a passport size photograph. We would dearly love to be able to have electronic nominations. The law does not permit that. The law does not permit lots of things because it's 2001, and we have been agitating for quite some time to have the law updated so that at least we can have that electronically as well as electronic voting as an option, of course. But yeah, we're stuck with what we have. So yes, hard copy, please.
Does it have to be passport size as well? Does it can't do sort of a standard photo size as such?
Well, we then have to crop it and all that sort of thing. So it's really to your advantage to do this, so that we have to treat everyone the same. So whatever we get in, we have to crop to make sure it fits in the little box.
Yep, and the box is a passport photo size, is it?
Yep.
Right,
yep.
sweet. Thank you.
And we also state, it's on the nomination paper, just head and shoulders. Believe you me, we've got everything. We've had family shots, we've had shots with a guy with his favourite dog, and insistent that the dog goes in as well. So, I mean, we get the lot. So we have to be, fairly ruthless and ready for standardisation so everyone is treated the same. Evidence of citizenship. We do ask for that to come with your nomination paper. That's just a simple photocopy of your passport or your birth certificate or your naturalisation certificate. That's a requirement for us because we have been caught out in the past where we did not ask for this. And the bad instance that we had was a few years ago or a few elections ago in a different council where the candidate ticked that she was a New Zealand citizen, went ahead, we didn't ask for evidence, went ahead and she subsequently got elected. We had a complaint lodged by an unsuccessful candidate that you might want to check the citizenship status of this person. So we tried and tried and tried with this particular elected member, and finally we got a response to the effect that she can't produce anything because she's not a New Zealand citizen. She came to New Zealand when she was 2. She believed she was a New Zealand citizen, but having said that, she travels on a UK passport. So her nomination, therefore elected member status, became invalid. And that was a very expensive by-election for that council. So we now ask for evidence of that, and really just protects the candidate and protects us that everything is correct when a candidate submits their nomination.
Just for clarity, I mean, a lot of people with passports, they may have expired with COVID and everything. Expired passports accepted?
Look, that's fine. It doesn't need to be certified either. That's another question that we get asked. So it's just a peace of mind. You're a New Zealand citizen. That's really all we're looking for. Candidates are able to have an affiliation. So that's a endorsement by any group or organisation. So you might be wanting to be endorsed or supported by a group in the community, a ratepayers association, for example, as an example. If you are showing that on your nomination paper, we do require evidence of that as well, please. Because again, many years ago, we were not asking for this. We got caught out. It went on the voting documents as the name and this particular affiliation. And then, of course, when they went out toward the electors, this particular organisation said, hey, we didn't support or endorse this person. So we now ask for evidence of that from that particular organisation. If you don't want to show a particular organisation, you can still say that you are independent, and that's fine, because that in itself sends a message to the electors that you don't belong to any organisation, you are actually independent. And you can also just leave it blank. So a lot of candidates just leave that blank, so nothing shows alongside their name rather than an affiliation. There are some unacceptable affiliations that I won't accept. A slogan, for example, vote for Dale. I won't accept that one because that's not a group or organisation. And I don't accept anything that's, for obvious reasons, that's indecent or slanderous. With your nomination paper, you're required to include a couple of things: a statement on your principal place of residence. So this is a statement whether you reside in the area that you're standing for or not in the area you're standing in. So that piece of information goes out with alongside your candidate profile statement and goes out to all electors. It's just another piece of information that the electors can look at when they're making their vote, and they might think, oh yes, this guy, this candidate is in my area, therefore gets my support or whatever. So it is a legal requirement, so it's on the nomination paper, as is a statement on all positions standing for. So again, if a candidate is standing for the mayor, a ward, and a community board, then those have to be stated on that piece of information that goes out with the electors. I feel a question coming on.
See a question coming up. Statement on all positions standing.
Yep.
Look, I'm looking at standing for the mayoralty.
Yep.
But I'm perhaps a little bit undecided whether it's going to be Paraparaumu Water district wide. I might put the mayoralty one in very soon. Well, I will be putting the mayoralty one in very soon. Do I have to put the statement on that mayoralty that I'll be running for other positions?
It's preferable too, because we use that information, of course, to provide the information for going forward onto the that goes out to the electors. However, we always do our checks and balances after the close of nomination. So we always go through and look at all the candidate names and say, what if there's more than one, we go back to their nomination paper, and if it's not completed, we go back to the candidate.
So if I put the mayoral one in, say now, that could be updated before the end of the nomination process.
Yes.
Just before.
So just before the end of the nomination process, you may put your second one in.
Yeah.
In that case, you'll put also standing for mayor.
Oh, definitely.
Yep. And we'll pick that up from,
okay, cool.
So nominations close at 12 noon on the 12th of August, Friday the 12th of August. So it's not too long now. They do close 12 noon sharp. Please do not leave this to the last minute. We've had people coming in at 5 to 12 because they are thinking strategically, element of surprise and all that sort of thing. They've come in at 5 to 12 and there's been a problem. One of their nominators, for example, is not on the electoral roll. They think that they are, but they forgot to do a change of address when they moved. It may have been 2 or 3 years ago, and they forgot to do that change. So they're not on the electoral roll. And if you come in at 5 to 12, you've got 5 minutes to get it fixed. And it's not a good thing. I've seen people running out onto the street and shoulder tapping complete strangers. Will you nominate me? One thing you cannot do is shoulder tap staff here. So that's the big no-no. Staff are apolitical, impartial. So they are not there to be providing, nominating for a candidate. Equally, if you do come in on that morning of when they close and there is a problem and you go away and you come back at 2 minutes past 12, we can't accept it either. Nominations closed at 12. So we really, really encourage, get your nomination in early. If you bring it in here, for example, we will check it while you wait. We'll check it off. We'll make sure that everything is correct. We'll give you a receipt. You can go away happy or comfortable that you've got it all correct. So really, just please don't leave it to the last minute. Campaigning. Campaigning can occur anytime, so you can be campaigning now if you want to. However, there are Council's election signs policy that will apply. There is a period of 8 weeks before election day. That's from the 13th of August to midnight on the 7th of October, where there is an election signs restriction. So signs on council property must be on pre-approved sites, and they're in the booklet, the candidate handbook there, where those sites are. And I've also said no signs on private property without permission of the landowner. Now, I particularly say that is because some candidates just think, oh, that's a good site, and I'll whack their sign up on someone's front fence without asking them, and then all hell breaks loose and we get a formal complaint and all that sort of thing. So get their permission first, please. Now, candidates generally do some promotion or advertising about their candidacy. It might be billboards or signs or things in newspapers or pamphlets and letterboxes. You may have a web page or signage on your vehicles, for example. All that is deemed election advertising and must have an authorization statement on it. Okay, the law is quite clear on that. It must have authorized by the candidate's name or the candidate's agent, doesn't have to be the candidate, with contact details of that person. So up until the 1st of July this year, it had to be either a place of residence or a place of business. From the 1st of July, we had an urgent law change, which broadened those that detail to more contact details. So now you can have a phone number or an email address or a website address or a PO box, anything like that. And that was really brought about because of concerns, particularly with female candidates, where they may have a billboard up and it's authorised by Mary Smith and then the place of residence. And that was really not a good safety thing. So that's been broadened. And what I would suggest is if you're going to have an email address created for your campaign, for example, use that email address. I probably wouldn't advise using your mobile number because then everyone will see it as well. So that's probably the safest way of doing it. If you do use social media, you have a Facebook page or something like that, it must appear somewhere on that. And we suggest on your homepage, have the authorization statement. But for every post or tweet or message, you don't need to do that because it becomes unmanageable.
Just double clarifying that. So you, from a Facebook perspective, you'll put it on your Facebook page.
Yep.
As such, but any posts or anything
Yep.
like that that you put up doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to have it, no. Okay. As long as if it's challenged and I can come to you and say, where is that authorization statement? You can go and say, there it is on the homepage. Yep.
Yeah, a little more clarification. So if you've got a personal Facebook page and you're doing any posts on there, it needs to be stated on your Facebook page. Where would you do that? Where your name is, where your background picture is, or where your profile picture is? How
Just somewhere that is viewable,
Yeah.
so that you can point me to the right position to say, I comply with this legal requirement. There it is there at the bottom of my homepage or whatever.
Right.
Okay, and it could be, where most people will access the information about you.
So the second question is, when you went through the options, so if you put a authorised by me,
Yep.
I could put, say, just an email address.
Yep.
You don't have to put all the other
Nope.
stuff.
No. From 1st of July, that all changed.
So just, minimal is just one option of contact.
So it just means that anyone, and particularly myself or council, for example, if there's a breach of the signs bylaw, can actually contact you, and it's a legal requirement. So that's probably one of the most common complaints that we receive about candidates or their signage, and that is that authorization statement or lack of, or
Okay, so in taking the signage out, if you're doing like social media posts, it needs to be on those posts here, or on your page that you're.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Which leads me on to social media anyway. So great way to campaign. It's instant, it's far-reaching, it's free. We know that. We don't accept fake news. We can use social media to promote yourself and your policies, and you can run polls, you can have key dates, all that sort of thing. It really is a great way to campaign. I know of in the past where council candidates have not spent a cent on their campaign and have been elected simply on their social media campaign. So it can be really, really effective. Having said that, council's media channels are off limits. So no linkage at all to council's media channels, mainly because council must be politically neutral. They cannot have any bias whatsoever. And these channels are, of course, monitored and removed if any is seen. I'll just pop in there, cybersecurity, keep safe. We're all aware of this these days. And it's very relevant. Anyone from the whole world can view what you put up there. And computers, it's just common sense these days. The last point there is be mindful of election offences. There are a number under the Local Electoral Act that I have to work under. We've put most of them or all of them actually in this handbook. So my advice is be aware of the election offences, be aware of what you can't do, because other candidates will be aware of what you can't do or what one can't do. And if you overstep the mark, then I get a complaint and we have to follow it up. So just know what the boundaries are, what you can't do, and stick within them. And as I said, one of the most common ones that I find is that a lack of authorization statement on your signs.
Could I get maybe some clarity on two things around that? One's your co-fruit signboards have to be no larger than 3 square meters. Is that right?
Under the signs bylaw.
It doesn't matter what configuration it is, as long as it's under 3 square meters. Is there a certain height off the ground or anything like that?
Look, I think there is actually.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll
and it's from the ground up. It's not. Yeah.
That'll be.
Yeah. It's all in here.
Yeah,
There's
no,
a
that's
chapter
right.
in there.
I'll have a look around there.
Yeah.
I think the big one's the size of the signage.
Yeah.
And the other one was just curiosity thing with regards to people that have signs on the letterbox that says we don't accept
pamphlets or
anything like that.
advertising. Yeah.
By law, they can actually do that. Is that right? In relation to newspapers and campaign material. I mean, it would be a good idea not to put it in there because that people basically piss people off. But
you'd be
sort of scenario. But in actual fact, it's not an offence as such.
You'd be silly to ignore that, as you just said, because
appreciate
you get a backlash from them, and even they goes to the media and all that sort of thing.
Mm.
So, but as to the legality of it, look, I don't know actually.
Yeah, no, he's correct. Any electoral materials can go in any mailbox, regardless of what's put on the post mailbox.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that point.
I had read that somewhere.
Right. Another question? Oh,
Last question.
Yeah.
The council media channels off limits. So council's Facebook page, obviously we post updates and information on there.
About the election?
No, about anything,
Oh,
just
okay.
in general.
Yeah.
You know, this is happening. We're
Yeah.
opening this. We're
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
How? Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, you can't.
No comment whatsoever.
No, you can't. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because, and that's monitored. So council has to remain totally impartial. So there can't be any linkages to any potential candidates or anything like that that could give the, can't think of the word, that someone that might be thinking, oh, council has a
Influence.
view on this or a
Yeah.
preference. Yeah.
So that's candidates, not current councillors. Any candidate is not able to.
Well, you've got to remember that a current councillor is a candidate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that does apply to currently
Yes.
elected members. Yep.
Just splitting hairs on that one. Would it be if you're currently sitting? If you're currently at the current council table, but not sitting?
Yes.
Would that still mean you can utilise council channels?
Yes,
as
because
such?
you're not moving from an elected member to a candidate. You're not standing. You're doing your normal business.
Just clarifying.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
But I dare say that those people couldn't make reference to a candidate.
Correct, because that would be influencing
Yep.
from the council resource.
Okay, that's
Yep.
cool.
And just to add to that, so council has some protocols in place at the moment around this. So some advice has been issued, and to err on the side of caution, council has nominated the mayor only as an official spokesperson, and has advised all other elected members to not use council, official council channels through the pre-election period, which is now, just to manage the risk of this.
Yep, that's cool.
And questions of who's standing and who isn't, not
makes
all those
sense.
things are known yet. So just to clarify.
It could be ambiguous up to the 12th, but after the 12th, bang, you know who's running and who's not anyway.
That's right. Yeah. So campaign expenditure. So all positions have candidate election expenditure limits based on the population of the area. And that's the chart that's taken straight from legislation. So it's in population bands. So that's the limit that you can spend legally. This is what you can apply practically. So that's based on current population estimates. So the a mayoral candidate can spend up to $30,000. And a ward at large can spend up to $30,000 as well, because it's the same population, and a ward candidate can spend between $7,000 and $20,000 depending on the ward that person is standing for and the size of the population. And there they are for the community boards as well, between $3,500 and $20,000, depending on the area that they're standing on. These are maximum limits, and most people don't spend near the limits, but do bear in mind that these limits include GST. I've had instances in the past where someone's thought, oh, I can spend $20,000 plus GST, so I can spend more, but they do include GST. Can't add limits together, so you might think, oh, how can I get to spend more if I had the money? Then you can stand for the mayor and at large, for example, and think, oh, I've got $60,000 that I can spend. That's not the case. You take the higher of the two that you're standing for, and that's your limit. Keep an account of all your expenses and any donations or income that you get in to help with your campaign. Keep an account of that. There is a form on the back of the nomination paper that must be filled out and returned to me by the 9th of December. Even if you spent nothing, such as that guy that's got elected unopposed, or got elected without spending anything practically, just write nil and sign it and date it and return it, but it must be returned by that date. So This is enforced because it is a legal requirement. We generally give a couple of days leeway after that. Because an offence has been committed under the Act, I have no option but to forward those details on to the police. And lo and behold, the police actually action it. So we're quite surprised and very pleased that they actually action that, because it's election, it's a level playing field. Everyone must be treated the same. And those forms are available publicly for 7 years. So it's not as if you have that form and it expires after a 3-year term. It actually has to be available for anyone to view for 7-year period. So we put them up on the website so anyone in the world can view those from that period. So my last point there is make sure that your form is accurate. Okay, make sure that it's accurate. So if you, for example, put a pamphlet out in every letterbox in a certain area, make sure, and there's a cost associated with printing that, make sure that cost is in that return, because someone receiving that pamphlet may actually just be looking and checking that you've actually declared that in your form. Voting. So voting period is 16th of September to 8th of October. Voting packs will be delivered by post from the 16th of September to the 21st. So that's a legal window. So we're holding New Zealand Post accountable to make sure they deliver within that legal time frame. You're able to campaign up to and including election day. So people sometimes think, oh, like parliamentary elections, I cannot campaign on election day. That's not the case with local elections. You can actually campaign right up until the close of voting on that Saturday morning. And in fact, we actually get a lot of hand-delivered votes on that Saturday morning. So a lot of people are still deciding and voting on that Saturday morning. So if a person hasn't received their ordinary vote in the post, or they've misplaced it, or they've just turned 18 or whatever, a person can still vote, but as a special voter. With a special vote, however, there's an extra step involved, and that's a statutory declaration that must be filled out by every special voter. So it's easier to get everyone onto the electoral roll and the correct details up until the 12th of August. But if you can't do that, or you just turn 18 or something like that, you can still vote as a special voter, but you need to fill out that declaration. And there are certain requirements for that declaration. You must sign it, it must be witnessed, and it must be dated, for example. And any one of those three things that are not present on that declaration, we cannot allow by law. So all this, someone goes through all this effort of doing a special vote, and we actually can't allow it because they forgot to date it. You know, so it's really important that that process is done correctly. So special votes available from here, and there's the booth operational normal business hours over the voting period for anyone to come in and get a special vote. Otaki Library will have them. Also, if you're commuting perhaps to Wellington, there is a regional voting hub in Manor Street there. So there will be an opportunity to do that, to lodge your vote or obtain a special vote in Wellington. And you can also phone my office and we can get one out to you via post. I do put in there candidates not to collect votes from electors. It's a plea from me. Don't think I'm doing a great community service. I might go to a retirement home or something like that and start collecting votes from electors. Please don't do that for two reasons. The first one is it's actually an offence to have in your possession someone else's voting document. And secondly, you just don't know who's watching you. And there could be an allegation that from you receiving that vote from that person to dropping it off in the ballot box here or putting it in the post to me, it could have been interfered with. So just don't, it's not worth it going down that route. So yeah, we just advise candidates not to do that. Voting closes at noon on Saturday, the 8th of October. Again, it's noon sharp. We will not accept anything at 2 minutes past 12. No excuses are accepted, you know, the car broke down or whatever. At 12 noon, that's it. No ifs or buts or maybes. Results. We'll have progress results at about early afternoon, about 2 o'clock on election day. That's about 95%. So that will be about all the votes received, including that day's mail, but will exclude those hand-delivered on the Saturday morning and all special votes. So the preliminary results will be announced on Sunday morning, which will then include those hand-delivered ones on the Saturday morning, but will still exclude the special votes. Now, what happens on Sunday afternoon after the election is we provide all the information for the special voting declarations to the Electoral Commission, and they then have to determine whether that special voter is eligible to vote or not. And they provide that information back to us on the late Wednesday afternoon, and then we fold that information into the official results, and the final results come out on late afternoon on the Thursday, the 13th of October. Elected members will then take office the day after the public notice. There's been a slight change in process around publication of notices from previous elections. And last year, there was a law change that enabled electoral statutory notices no longer to be placed in newspapers, but can go on websites. So it's far more efficient for us to place all our statutory notices on a website and far quicker. So we'll be placing those results on that Friday, the 14th of October, and elected members will take office and be paid from that Saturday, the 15th of October. But, and there's always a but, you can't act until you've been sworn in. So there's, for mayor and councillors, there is a first meeting or inauguration on the 27th of October. So although you're elected members and you're being paid from the 15th of October, you actually can't act until after that first meeting on the 27th. And finally, just some resources. Candidate handbooks down the back there, just references to the act that I have to work under. Attend a council meeting, well, not in person at the moment, but online, soon to be in person. Read agendas and minutes available online. Just see the range of subjects that council or community boards deal with, or talk to a council staff member. And that's me there, Dale Ofsosky, as the electoral officer, and our council's main point of contact here is Katrina, and she's through in the booth, through in the corridor. So that's it from me. Any further questions?
Yep. Look, I've just got two, nothing too major. Mailed or posted votes have to be received by 12 o'clock on the Saturday, is that right?
Yep.
You can't post them like Saturday morning.
No, they're not postmarked, so they must be received by me or an electoral official. Okay, so we'll have a number of ballot boxes scattered around,
yep,
so people can drop them off, but they will be sealed and closed and removed at midday.
Cool, just
Yep.
clarifying.
Yep.
And also just confirming signs need to be taken down.
Yeah, by midnight on the 7th.
Yeah, on the day before.
Yep.
Yep. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Thank you. And look, just in general, I did mention before there was a gap where not much happens. It's not so much that not much happens. We go through the induction period. And I just, in hindsight, found that it would have been a good time to have read a lot of information and that sort of stuff, because once we take off in February, it sort of takes off a bit there as well.
Just to add to that, there will be a comprehensive induction that will be put together for new elected members, both councillors and community board members, and so there'll be a plan and there'll be materials that will be made available to read in your own time and sessions to attend. But there'll be more information about that once we get to that stage. So I think over to you, Sean, and then we'll open up for any other questions, and we're almost there.
So what happens after election day? You'll get a phone call to let you know that you have been successful. I think that's all the candidates. And then, as Martin's mentioned, the work really starts in terms of that. There's about 100 days, or that 3 months between October through till Christmas and then to January, February, although there's a fair break over Christmas. There is a lot of that induction process going on, a lot of reading material, a lot of presentations that relate to, council's involved in, I think, 15 separate activities. So there is a lot to take on board, and more than happy to answer questions. It's another element to that period of time, as to if you've got an issue, if you've got a concern or query, then yeah, ask a staff member. You'll have likely be GMs will be heavily involved in the group managers will be heavily involved in the that induction process, and you'll be given, I think, a list of who you can contact if you've got questions. And I would certainly encourage you to do that if you do have queries, questions, get hold of staff. And that's it really. Yeah, we do. I mean, there is a lot of work involved. There's a lot going on with meetings in here and community board meetings, but we do also have a bit of a laugh. It isn't, it isn't all, I was going to say doom and gloom, but it isn't all that heavily structured that we don't interact with councillors and staff. And certainly I have found it enjoyable. And we do, like I said, we do have a bit of banter and a bit of a laugh with the councillors and elected members. So if you're successful, great, and look forward to working with you over the next 3 years. There was just another bit of information regarding the mayor's role. There's a vehicle that actually comes. There's an option to have a vehicle if you are elected as the mayor, and you have access to that over the 3 years. But it comes with a salary sacrifice. So some of your remuneration goes towards funding that. So if you're elected as mayor, you choose to have a vehicle, then there are different bands of what you might end up paying depending on how much use you make of it in terms of full public use or limited to public events and things like that. So I think that's it, unless there's any other questions of me, or there's a general, Sarah will close things out. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. So just to reiterate what I think Dale and Sean have said at different points. So if you do want to find further information, there's a lot of information on our website. The Candidate Information Handbook is really a good source of information for all of the things that Dale's taken you through today. The pre-election report is a really good resource for understanding what's coming for council over the next wee while. Reform is obviously is a significant thing on the agenda, and there's lots of really helpful information about that in the pre-election report, and our annual report as well has just been published. So that's also an important resource to refer to. This session, as I've said, is being recorded, so we'll make this available on the website in the next few days. So if you do speak to anyone who wants more information about becoming a candidate, I'd encourage them to have a look on our website and potentially tune into the session. The nomination booth is being manned, and nomination papers and candidate information handbooks are also available via our libraries. So that's about it. It's a lot of information. Thank you for attending, and we'll just open up for any final questions before we close with a karakia.
Look, not really a question. I just want to endorse what Mr. Mallon was saying. The induction period I found was a really good chance to get to know a little bit of the senior management, because it's, you're coming into a role, and it's quite a daunting scenario to be in, but the barriers get broken down very, very quickly. There's a good rapport around the table, which was great. But in the same token, when you get down to business, as Will Concord was saying, Father Concord say, it's business time, sort of thing. But yeah, I've certainly enjoyed the last 3 years, and it's had its challenges, but it's been quite very rewarding as well.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll invite you back to the table, Kahu, to close with the karakia.
Sure, I'll do it from here.
Sure.
Ai ke tau iho ngā mana ki tango te mea ngaro ki runga ki tēnā o mātou. Ai ke tau iho te hua mā kihiki kia toi te kupu, kia toi te mana, kia toi te reo Māori. Tūturu kia rongo, whakamaua kia tīna hui e tāiki e. Mauri ora.
Thanks, everyone. Feel free to have a coffee or a bicky as you leave, or to stay around and ask any further questions you might have.
Thank you, Lawrence. Is there anything else we can do for you before we close off the Zoom meeting?
No, thank you for your time. Very informative. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.